That should be an N, not an M. It should be an N as a never, not an M as a Mary.
Okay, did I have that misspelled then?
Yeah, it looks like, I can't tell, but it looks like there's an M.
Yeah, there is. That my mistake. I have it right everywhere else.
It's an N as a never rather than an M as a Mary.
Okay, so I have it right everywhere else.
There we go.
Okay, I have it right everywhere. William Goren. He is an attorney, helps people with Americans with disabilities, and does some consulting. So that's what we're going to do. Let's just dive into the show and find out more about him.
Podcast the show.
Just do the show.
All right. Let's cook with gas.
Welcome to the Trust Radio Network. Join your host, attorney Stephen A. Leahy, every Saturday night at 7, right here on AM 560, as he engages in conversation with some of the most trusted professionals in all of Chicagoland. Enjoy interviews with local professionals dedicated to providing the very best products and services. Learn who they are, what they do, and most importantly, why they do it. Take a step inside the minds of some of Chicagoland's most successful business leaders and learn all there is to know every Saturday night at 7 on the Trust Radio Network. Now, here's your host, attorney Stephen A. Leahy.
Okay, welcome to the program. I am your host. I'm attorney Stephen A. Leahy. Like the guy just told you, he wouldn't lie to you. We are here with the Trust Radio Network, where I introduce you to trusted professionals. Now remember, this show, it's sponsored by the law office of Stephen A. Leahy, PC, and Opum Tax Advocates. Opum Tax Advocates helps business professionals solve IRS problems forever. We help them with audits and levies, liens and garnishments, collections, unfiled tax returns, and payroll tax issues. But I also help people with mortgage foreclosures, loan modifications, bankruptcy, and other debt-related issues. So if you have any of these problems, or if you know someone who does, you should give us a call at 312-664-6649. Again, it's 312-664-6649. You can visit us on the web at chicagotaxteam.com. Now, again, this is the Trust Radio Network, where I introduce you to trusted professionals. We interview a lot of professionals, a lot of attorneys. I like to interview attorneys and find out about their practice. And again, this is why it's my favorite. It's my favorite show, because I learn so much about what's going on out there, because we have the best of the best here. And today is no exception. We have attorney William Goren. He is an American with Disabilities attorney, and we're going to learn all about that today. So let's welcome Attorney Goren. Okay.
Pleasure.
Well, we usually have applause, but no applause today. So thank you so much for joining us, Attorney. I appreciate you taking the time to talk to us. Well, as I mentioned, you first I'd like to find out about you. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
I am a congenitally deaf attorney functioning entirely in the hearing world with Bluetooth technology, lip reading, and advanced hearing aids. Been involved with the area of understanding the rights of people with disabilities since 1990 as an attorney. My passion is to solve the hysteria that's out there about what the rights of people with disabilities are, and gets people to understand that it's the law to work with it. It's really complicated. It's a very comprehensive law. It covers a lot of different things, and then there are related laws. And so I, through my representation side of my practice and my larger consulting side of my practice, I try and make all of that understandable. My blog website is on there, and there's over 450 blog entries exploring different aspects of the Americans with Disabilities Act. So that's a little bit about me.
Well, you mentioned that you have two areas of your practice that you help people, you represent people, but you also do consulting. Tell us a little bit about what that means. Do you help companies comply with the ADA? Is that what you do?
Yeah, the representation side of the practice is the much smaller side. That's giving out legal advice, occasionally co-counseling with other attorneys on Americans with Disabilities Act and related litigation. It could also mean taking people through administrative processes such as EEOC or the Office of Civil Rights. I do not spearhead litigation. I don't have the personality for it. I just don't like it. I did it for 3 years out of law school, and I'm thrilled that I got the experience. It made me 100% better attorney, but it's not me.
Yeah.
The larger part of my practice is consulting, and on the consulting side, that I do a lot of training, so helping companies, a variety of different entities understand what the various issues that they want to deal with, whether it's effective communication, whether it's internet accessibility, whether it's service animals and emotional support animals, could be dozens and dozens of different things. I have my blog that I've been doing since 2011, Understanding the ADA, which is my favorite part of my practice. And then the other side of it is I work with attorneys around the country on their ADA and ADA-related cases and litigation, where I am essentially acting as an ADA compliance expert or consulting expert or consultant on litigation, helping the jury and the judge and the attorney just understand what the law requires of various people and what that might mean to them in terms of their case.
Well, that's interesting in that you act as a witness sometimes. Is that right?
Yes, right, correct.
Okay, so because you're the guy who comes in as an expert witness and explains to people the way it's supposed to, what the law requires. Is that right?
That's correct.
Did I notice that you did some academia work too? Do you work in?
Sure, I sure did. I spent 12 years in Chicago teaching people how to be paralegals full time. The last 4 of which I was the person who was responsible for running the paralegal program at South Suburban College in South Holland, Illinois, fierce White Sox territory. I grew up in near North Suburban Chicago as a Cub fan, and then I did a variety. I went to undergrad in New York at Vassar College and got my first law degree at University of San Diego and an LLM in health law at DePaul. So when I got out to San Diego, the Sox were really good at that time. That was the old days of Lamar Hoyt. And so to me, it became a matter of Chicago pride. And the Cubs and the Sox don't play each other that often. So I root for both teams. And the Sox are looking really good this year. Cubs not so much. But Bears are another story. Bulls got a possibility. But so that's just a little bit about the personal side of me.
Well, let me interrupt you here a little bit, and let me tell you that I'm a North Sider myself, big Cub fan.
Okay.
So I always like when I'm talking to someone about who they are, and the first thing they want to talk about is baseball, because that's me, right? I'm a big baseball fan, and I appreciate that. You said you grew up in the northern suburbs.
Near Northern. Grew up in Lincolnwood. Went to high school in Niles West.
Mm-hmm.
I think of northern suburbs. I think of Deerfield, Highland Park, Langto.
Yeah.
Lincolnwood is the house I grew up in is quite literally a narrow street across from Chicago.
Yeah.
So I think it's more accurate to call Lincolnwood a near northern suburb.
I agree. I was in Sauganash for some time and up there over on Peterson and over on Peterson and Cicero. So I used to live over there, so I know the area very well. And it's funny that you mentioned that. I had someone tell me yesterday or the other day, they were telling me they were from the western suburbs, and I asked them where, and they said Oak Park. I'm like, that's not really a western suburb. Kind of like what
Chicago's funny that way, isn't it?
Kind of what you're saying is like, and I say it's just like Evanston. It's not a northern suburb. It's kind of part of it's just as you said north. It's kind of a near north suburb. So that just
I think it's by definition it's really the very beginning of the northern suburb because literally across the street from where I grew up was Chicago, and it was a very narrow street. And then you have to go. You just start heading north to get into the northern suburbs.
Exactly.
So I don't know if anybody besides us talks of it that way, but I think it's most accurate.
I think most Chicagoans do. So that's why what you're talking, it screams as a local. You're a local guy. So right now you live in Georgia. Is that right?
Correct. About 20 minutes east of the Atlanta Capitol building in a town called Decatur.
Mm-hmm. What brought you to Georgia?
My wife got a job with CDC, with the Centers for Disease Control, which is down here. And so the actual office, she hasn't gone in regularly in a couple of years with the pandemic and all. But the actual office is about 15, 20 minutes. And we have one daughter who's a high school senior who, since this is being aired in the Midwest, she's off to Drake University next year. We're really excited. Decatur has a tremendous place for her to receive an education. We've been very pleased with what happened there. So that's how we settled in Decatur. It was close to where my wife had to be when she had to be in the office, and the school system is fantastic.
Well, we're going to take a little bit of a break here in just a moment, but first I want to tell you we've been talking with attorney William Goren, and he's a Americans with Disabilities attorney, and we're going to get to know him a little bit better in the next segment. Remember, though, if you are fighting the IRS and you need help, then you should probably contact Open Tax Advocates. Open Tax Advocates helps business professionals solve IRS problems forever. Right? So if you're having IRS problems, you should give us a call at 312-664-6649. Attorney Goren, how can people find you?
Best way to find me is just go to my blog website, understandingtheada.com. If you're looking for information about the rights of people with disabilities, I've got over 450 blog entries over the last 8 years.
Well, we're going to take a break, and we're going to
kinds of different things.
Well, we're going to take a break, and we'll join on the other side here on AM 560. The Answer. Our guy wasn't here to put the music in. Well, thank you. That was good. I have a great segment. The next segment I'd like to talk about, and you'll see why. But I always like to talk to people about their law career. You know what got them what got them involved and things. And as soon as George comes back, we'll do it. That was very good. Thank you so much, sir. I appreciate that. And then we'll do the show is in 5 segments, as I showed you. Right, the Constitution segment's next, and then I do a frequently asked questions segment.
Okay.
Okay. If I could ask for your patience, he's not here, so let me go get a drink of water, and I'll be right back with us. Okay, sir?
Sounds good.
Okay. Then to do the second show. No big deal. Okay, Attorney Goren. Let's move along to the second segment, George.
Yep. Stand by 1 second.
Standing by 1 second.
Standing by, sir. 1 second has elapsed, sir. All right, 1 second.
And now, back to the Trust Radio Network on AM 560. The Answer. Real conversations with some of the most trusted professionals in Chicagoland. Once again, here's attorney Stephen A. Leahy.
Welcome back to the show. This is the Trust Radio Network here on AM 560. The Answer. We're here with our technical producer, George Hoffman.
Hello, Steve.
He's not the regular jolly at Josh, but he'll do.
No, I'm not jolly in any way.
You are kind of jolly. That's not true, George. So again, and we're here with our guest. Our guest this week is Attorney William Goren. Attorney Goren is a Americans with Disabilities attorney. Works as a witness on cases, helps people. Attorney Goren, welcome back to the program. I wanted I wanted to ask you, Attorney Goren. I always ask. I interview a lot of attorneys, and I'm always interested in how they got involved in law school. Did you always want to be a lawyer?
Yes, my mother's father was a lawyer, and I absolutely idolized him. So I knew in fourth grade that I wanted to be a lawyer. What I didn't know was what law really was like. I thought I was going to be the next Perry Mason, because that's what I grew up watching on. Maybe I'm dating myself. And he was a general practitioner, and so, but it didn't work out that way. But yes, I knew I always wanted to be a lawyer, and what I wind up doing in my practice is I wind up combining my passion and love for teaching with substantive knowledge of the law into one super niche practice, and that's what makes me tick. If I was doing traditional law work, perhaps like the kind that you do, I think I'd be miserable.
Well, again, everybody, we're going to talk about that in just a second, because I got to tell you that last week I had an attorney on, and he told me the same story that he watched Perry Mason, and that's why he became an attorney. He loved to watch Perry Mason, and it had he became a litigator. But I understand I'm not a litigator myself, and it's not right for everybody. But so you
sure isn't.
So what did you go to law school right out of college?
Yeah, that's pretty typical, as you know, Steve.
Mm-hmm.
Most people go straight to law school from college. For those who are thinking about going to law school, who might be listening on the radio, I don't recommend that. I really recommend that you take 2 years off between college and law school. That way you know you can make it in the real world. You know you've seen what you can do. You know if law school washes out somehow or you don't like it, you have something you can fall back on. All the head games that go on in law school, you're kind of more immune to that because you know you've made it. So, but I went straight. I went straight for the first law degree. For my JD degree, I went straight. And then I did litigation for almost 3 years with a small high-end civil litigation firm in Chicago, downtown on LaSalle. I realized I hated litigation. And then I went back to school, got an LLM in health law from DePaul, and then I wound up doing a variety of things after that. Well, so for the first law degree, I didn't take time off. For the second one, I did. There was a period of time before I got the second law degree.
So we're talking with attorney William Goren, who helps people with Americans with Disabilities cases. I have 2 sons, Attorney Goren, and both of my sons are in law school. And you kind of touched on this a little bit, but what kind of advice would you have besides what? And I think that's very good advice that you've already given. But what kind of advice would you have for kids that are in law school and people that are recently graduated from law school?
The first thing I would say is regardless of what you wind up doing, I wouldn't focus on area of law. I would focus on if there's something in your day-to-day existence doing that particular kind of law that you're passionate about. And there's got to be something. If there's nothing in your day-to-day existence that you're not passionate about, I think you're going to be miserable. That doesn't mean you have to be passionate about real estate law or health law or whatever, but maybe there's just some aspect of that particular area of the law that you could be really passionate about, and that is going to help. The second thing I would say is that law is becoming very much a specialty area. So if you have something about you that makes you unique, then you should really focus on that and use it for all it's worth. So if you're someone that has a history of blogging, or you have a history where you've been in the music business or whatever it is, I don't care what it is, you should really go with that. And I know there's a risk of saying, well, maybe I don't want to be what's obvious, but your passion and your experience and the expertise you have already, even if it's outside law, that's going to make you stand out compared to others.
I think that's very good advice. You mentioned that you did some litigation. In my interviews with attorneys, I find that often whatever the job they had out of law school becomes their career.
Not me.
No, that wasn't you. So tell us a little bit about your litigation experience and why you decided maybe to move away from that.
Well, I'm very grateful for the litigation experience. It was a firm that no longer exists. It was called Lewis G. Davidson and Associates. Lewis G. Davidson was one of the premier trial attorneys in the universe, and he had two sons that took over the practice, and I worked for John Davidson, and I was thrilled with what I learned from him. But litigators are an interesting personality. It's really about the fight. And if you win, that's great, and the client benefits, okay, that's nice, but it's about the fight. I am firmly convinced that if I was hiring for a law firm and I was the hiring partner for a law firm and we had a litigation practice, I think the best litigators should not be focused on whether you were law review or not. What I would be looking for is that person who's graduating law school, do they have a record of athletic excellence? Because the athletes are used to working in teams. They're used to pushing themselves up to the limit of the rules, and they want to win. And that's really the mentality of a litigator when you think about it. So that's who I would be hiring. I love sports, but I never really played it competitively outside of the high school tennis team. I am not a win-lose personality. Litigators are win-lose personality. And they lose, they go on, they win the next time. I just don't work that way. And I really don't even enjoy the whole process of trying to win. My personality is I want to educate. I'm an educator. I'm a teacher. I want to help people understand. That's not litigation. So I just through a variety of ways. I did a variety of different things, and in the end, when my wife got the job at CDC after 12 years of teaching full-time and always doing this Americans with Disabilities Act thing, no matter what I was doing, I just said, why not put the two together?
Well, I think that's great advice, and I think that's good insight about the athletic. I never heard that before, but it makes perfect sense about being an athlete and being a litigator. It is a win. It's all about winning. Now, although I've had some litigators who tell me it's not, but of course they want to win. Everybody wants to win. And I think that's very good advice. I
think the litigator's probably trying to make themselves feel good, but it is about the winning and losing. And of course, they would, if they're not helping the people they're representing, I don't think they could live with themselves. And they are helping the people they're representing,
Absolutely.
And someone's got to do it. I don't, as they say in my world, I don't prescribe that, but that doesn't mean I have to do it.
Well, we got about a minute left, and I wanted to talk a little bit about when you turned to the Americans with Disabilities Act as your focus of your practice and what you do.
1990, I was the general counsel for the Harris County Mental Retardation Authority in Texas, which is an independent governmental entity that's the safety net for intellectual disabilities, substance abuse, and mental health conditions.
Mm-hmm.
And because of the clients that we were responsible for and we were a public entity and the law was signed, I just dived into it. And then I said, hey, I'm a person with a disability. I live this stuff. Mm-hmm. And so I never looked back. So I've been dealing with it since 1990 as an attorney all the time. Regardless of what I was doing full-time or not, this has always been a part of what I do.
Well, that's interesting. We're going to talk a little bit about that. The next segment, though, we're going to talk about the Constitution and how. And I asked for Attorney Goren to come up with the talk about the Constitution. We're going to do that next in the Constitution segment, and then we're going to get to know Attorney Goren a little bit more than that. Now, remember, the show's sponsored by Open Tax Advocates. Call them at 312-664-6649. We're going to take a short break. Join us on the other side with Attorney Goren on AM 560. The Answer.
That was polite of the Thunder to wait until we were done with the segment this time.
Yeah, it's raining a lot up here, Attorney. Let's, the Constitution
It's
bump.
80 degrees and sunny here, Steve.
Show off. The game. There was supposed to be a Cub game today. They moved it to 7:00 tonight. They're just moving the times like crazy. We got the Constitution bump. George.
Yes. Give me 1 second.
Okay. Whenever you're ready, George.
Hold on. Beginning of that got cut off.
The bump. First the regular intro, then the bump. Joliet.
Like Peoria, this one.
You're listening to the Trust Radio Network on AM 560. The Answer. Step inside the minds of some of Chicago's most successful business leaders. Here's your host, Attorney Stephen A. Leahy.
From 1788 until the end of time, we the people make a resolution to defend the Constitution.
We're not going to sit here and listen to you bad-mouth the United States of America.
So let liberty, justice, and freedom ring. It's the Constitution segment.
Our Constitution is a document in which we, the people, tell the government what it is allowed to do.
Well, welcome back to the program. Thank you, Ronnie. I am Attorney Stephen Leahy. We're here with our technical producer, George Hoffman. Our guest this week is Attorney William Goren, and Attorney Goren helps people with the Americans with Disabilities Act as a consultant, and he helps in cases. But I asked Attorney Goren if he could talk a little bit about the Constitution and the connection with the ADA. Tell us a little bit about that, Attorney Goren.
Yeah, that's really wild. One of the things I enjoy about my practice, and the ADA is so broad, I go across employment, governmental access, places of public accommodation access, and then I get into a variety of other laws, such as Air Carrier Access Act, Fair Housing Act, workers' comp sometimes, and the Constitution is really fascinating when it comes to people with disabilities. When it comes to people with disabilities, there's something called the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment. People with disabilities are the only group that change the classification depending upon the facts. No other group does that. So if you have an ethnic minority and you have an equal protection claim, you know that the ethnic minority is going to be in a certain category for purposes of trying to figure out just how they have to go about proving their case, whether a particular law is likely to stand up or not. You don't know that with people with disabilities. Another area that's really interesting in the constitutional law area lately is the whole idea of whether a person can just go around spotting issues and then say, hey, this is wrong, and I don't have any desire to really come back or to use the facility, but this is wrong, and because it's wrong, I'm suffering distress, and I should have the right to sue. That's what we call testers. In the Fair Housing Act, there is testers have standing. There is a real question now whether a tester, and you think of the drive-by, in the trade they call them drive-by lawsuits, there's a real question now, in light of recent Supreme Court opinions, whether a tester under the Americans with Disabilities Act has standing. But there are a variety of constitutional issues that come up. Another one that comes up is a person with a disability wants to sue a governmental entity, a state, or an arm of the state for damages. There's this question of sovereign immunity. That also ties into that whole equal protection thing. So those are just three constitutional issues that come up in my practice.
Well, I that's very interesting about the standing. I know that these testers, or that I thought the ADA specifically gave them, private actions. Is that right or not? gave people private actions?
Yes, but that's what's so interesting about the recent Supreme Court case called TransUnion, which had nothing to do with the Americans with Disabilities Act. That case says you need something more. You may need something more than a statutory violation to have standing. So just because there's a statutory violation doesn't mean you have a stake in the lawsuit. And that is wild. So, for example, one of the things you see a lot is people will go around, and I do a lot in this area of internet accessibility. You have people with disabilities that use screen readers, which is what the blind uses, and they will go around the internet looking for websites that they just can't use screen readers for, and they don't have any desire to purchase anything on the site or even use it. They're just saying that site is wrong, and they bring a lawsuit. You also see it in the area of hotels. There's a regulation saying that hotels have to have certain information out on websites. Well, what if they don't? There are people who are looking and say, oh, you don't have that information, now I'm going to sue. So the question is, does a person like that, who doesn't have any intention of using that hotel or can't buy anything on that website or doesn't have any intention of buying anything on that website, if they bring suit, would they have standing in the constitutional sense to be able to move their case forward? And the statutory violation isn't enough anymore.
This is amazing because this same issue is coming up in consumer law practices. I had a consumer attorney bring this very case up, and this issue about standing. What gives somebody standing, and this is very interesting. I will have to talk about this another time. We're here with attorney William Goren. Thanks so much for your. I think that was a fascinating constitutional. Summary, I should say, right? Because we don't have time for in-depth things. But we're going to talk to Attorney Goren a little bit more. Now, remember, fight the IRS with Open Tax Advocates. Call them at 312-664-6649. You can visit them on the web at chicagotaxteam.com. We're going to take a little bit of a break. Join us on the other side on AM 560. The Answer.
All right, that thunder definitely came through.
That was actually very good. And I'm really amazed at this standing issue. And I know that there's some cases here in Illinois or some laws here in Illinois that let private actions for some tax violations too. And you got the same thing that people go around on the internet and try to buy things just to bring lawsuits. I know the ADA is there's a lot of that going on with attorneys that bring lawsuits one after the other, and my own opinion is a lot of times this turns into some sort of that they're just really squeezing them for money, and that's a problem. But
where else that happens
Where's
is
that?
in music licensing.
Yes,
one outfit was formed just to go around buying up and using and republishing public domain things, and then they would go after anybody who used them.
Yes. Yeah.
As a reason.
Okay, we're going to talk about that. I'm going to ask you about some frequently asked questions that you get. Okay, Attorney Goren. Let's start the next segment, George.
All right, stand by.
Standing by.
Standing by.
Now, back to the Trust Radio Network on AM 560. Hear from Chicago's business leaders. Learn who they are, what they do, and why they do it. Once again, here's attorney Stephen A. Leahy.
Hey, welcome back to the show. I am your host. I'm attorney Stephen A. Leahy. The guy just told you that. And I'm here with our technical producer, George Hoffman. Thank you, George.
You're welcome.
I couldn't do the show without you today.
True story.
Today. Anyway, we also we're joined here with our guest this week is attorney William Goren. He's already shared a ton of information, the ADA, about the Americans with Disabilities Act. Attorney, thanks so much for joining us here today. You mentioned that you started this in 90. Talk a little bit about. Can you tell us a little bit about the origins of the Americans with Disability Act? Because that's it's not that long ago.
It started with the Rehabilitation Act of 1973, and then people like Judy Heumann fought to get regulations put in place to implement that. The ADA is based upon the Rehabilitation Act of 1973. It follows the same format. The difference, there's some differences substantively between the two laws, but the difference is the Rehabilitation Act was for people who took federal funds. And then the ADA said, okay, we're going to take that same paradigm, and if you have 15 or more employees, or you're a non-federal governmental entity, or you're a place of public accommodation which has a defined meaning, then that paradigm is going to apply, that we're going to use that paradigm. And that's a gross oversimplification, but that's the short answer.
Well, it's a clarification for me, so I appreciate that. Tell us on some of the most common questions that you get from your clients or from your customers for your consulting. Talk a little bit about that.
Sure. I kind of jotted down 4. First one is, do I have a disability? People don't realize that the ADA has been amended. It doesn't take much to have a disability under the ADA. It's a physical or mental impairment that substantially limits a major life activity, a record of such an impairment, or you are regarded as having a physical or mental impairment, regardless of whether a major life activity is limited. That's one question I get. The essential eligibility of a program, when you're talking about non-federal governmental entities, colleges, universities, governmental entities, you're trying to access the program. Well, what are the essential eligibility requirements of that program? That comes up a lot. Another one is attendance, an essential element of the job. That's used now. After 2 years of being in the pandemic and realizing that we can work remotely, executives are saying, let's come back to work, and people are saying, no, I enjoy it this way. Is attendance really an essential function of the job? And then another thing that comes up, which is tremendously complicated, is the whole idea of whether you have a service animal or an emotional support animal. And the reason that gets complicated is that there are 4 different laws that deal with that, and it can get really confusing, even for people with disabilities, as to the right you have for an animal that helps your disability. Very much depends on what law is involved. So those are real common things that are coming up a lot, and I've already mentioned internet accessibility, effective communication, which is a term of art. That's about a half a dozen.
Well, let's talk a little bit about the internet accessibility, because I'm not familiar with that. I have a little bit of a background in internet. I have a information technology LLM, and so I know a little bit about this. But tell me a little bit about that. I'm not really familiar with that.
Well, the internet accessibility issue comes up in the situation where you have a business that's entirely online. That's when all the confusion starts. And the question is, when you have a business that's entirely online, does that website have to be meaningfully accessible to people with disabilities? There is something out there called the Web Content Accessibility Guideline 2.1, and that's kind of the gold standard. There are no regulations out there whatsoever. The legal standard is meaningful accessibility. So the question is, when does that internet site have to be accessible? And the answer depends on where you are. You could say it never does. That's one line of cases that hasn't really had much currency. You could say that it always does. That's actually the 7th Circuit there in Illinois has taken that view. You could say that it depends on whether there is a gateway to a physical store. And then you could say if it is the type of thing going on in subparagraph 7 of section 12181 of Title 42, then that applies. And then the 11th Circuit came up with something that was just really bizarre, but that case wound up being vacated and mooted, so it theoretically no longer exists.
Well, that's very interesting, and your knowledge of this is kind of it's vast, and I'm really impressed by the scope of the ADA and how it touches so many different
areas. That's what makes it so interesting, Steve, is that is I don't get bored.
Yeah.
It's not like I'm dealing with the real estate closing or the same thing or mortgage close. It's always something different and cool going on, and I like that part of it.
Well, that's amazing. This we've been talking with Attorney William Goren about the Americans with Disabilities Act. And again, one reason why I like this show, why I like to do this show, is because I learned so much. I mean, I got to tell you, you've opened my eyes to many different areas of the law that the ADA, and as I mentioned, I have this internet issues that I'm really interested in, and that's fascinating. So thanks so much for sharing that with us. We've been here with Attorney William Goren. Remember, this show is sponsored by Open Tax Advocates. Go to ChicagoTaxTeam.com if you have any IRS problems. We're going to take another short break, wrap it up with Attorney William Goren right after these messages on AM 560, The Answer.
Really enjoy talking to you, Steve. You're just so much fun.
Well, man, it's amazing. We all heard about the ADA, but that's the vast scope of this is amazing. And
People
again,
don't realize that.
Yeah, and you're not. That's why I love to talk to guys like yourself who just know so much about their area that it's eye opening. I like this one. I have a guy that's been on my show. He's a floor guy, but he knows more about floors than anybody you've ever met, and makes it interesting and fascinating, as you did with the ADA. So I appreciate that so much. So let's do the final segments. It's a very short segment, and then we'll wrap the show up. And I appreciate you being with us. Let's do it, George.
Stand by.
Standing by.
Back to the Trust Radio Network on AM 560. The Answer. Real conversations with some of the most trusted professionals in Chicagoland. Once again, here's Attorney Stephen A. Leahy.
It is Attorney Stephen A. Leahy here on the Trust Radio Network. We're here with our technical producer, George Hoffman. Georgie, I like to call him.
Hello. You like to call me that?
I do like to call you Georgie.
One of us.
Well, I got you. You have given me a microphone, and I'm using it. We've been joined here today with our guest has been Attorney William Goren. I was telling Attorney Goren in between here about, man, it's just fascinating how much this area of the law. I love to talk to people like yourself, Attorney, because you know so much about that area, and you really open my eyes to the vast. The vastness of ADA and how it touches so many different areas of the law and the Constitution. So thanks so much for that.
My pleasure.
Well,
That very much drives me, is I want people to realize that, and that's really important.
Well, on the second segment, we talked about what attorneys or law students should do, and I think just what you pointed out: find out what you like to do, and then do that. And there's so many areas of the law that it's you'll always find something. And I think that what happens with attorneys, as you say, they say they hate their job. It's because they picked the wrong area, right? Do you agree with that?
I agree with that. Plus, they ignore who they are as individuals.
Exactly.
If they're doing something that they already like, it's going to be a lot easier for them to be happy.
Agreed. And I think with the law, as we find out, it touches so many aspects, every aspect of our life, that you can always find something in the law that intrigues you and fascinates you. And so that's what you should look for. And of course, you've done that, and you've made a living doing that. You call yourself an educator, and I got to say, you've educated me and our listeners so much about the ADA. So I really appreciate you taking the time to talk to us. Is there something you want to leave us with? Some nugget that you'd like to leave us with?
That the ADA is really complicated. And people may be familiar with employment or non-federal governmental access or place of public accommodations, but sometimes you need to get outside of those boxes, and don't be afraid to go looking for someone who understands those various areas because the definition of a disability is the same across all of the titles, but how it all works out really varies depending on what title you're in. So it's kind of like, I'm not sure I'd recommend trying this at home type thing.
Well, I got to say, as you brought up these areas of the law, employment, public accommodations, all of this is so consumer law, and how this all affects consumers. We talked about internet and how that affects, technology. So again, every aspect of our lives is really touched by this ADA. So I want to take you this time for. Thanks so much for joining us here today, sharing your knowledge with us. I mean, it's amazing. We've just touched the surface, and I know that if we spent more time together, we can really dive into some of these issues.
I'm happy to do that, Steve. Anytime you just let me know, I'm happy to return. I had a blast. Thank you so much for having me.
Well, as I had a blast, and that's the first good. As I think I told you, my first goal with my clients: have fun, and that's really what it's about. And again, when you're doing what you like to do, you can have fun doing that. So again, thanks so much for joining us. I think it's been eye-opening for me about the different areas of the law that I've never really considered that the ADA touches on. And so again, we want to thank Attorney William Goren for taking the time with us here today, sharing his vast knowledge about the ADA and law in particular. So thanks so much, Attorney Goren. We're going to take we're here every Saturday at 7:00 here on the Trust Radio Network. Don't forget to join us here on AM 560. The Answer.
Thank you for tuning in to the Trust Radio Network on AM 560, The Answer. Be sure to join Attorney Stephen A. Leahy again next Saturday night at 7 as he engages in conversations with some of the most trusted professionals in all of Chicagoland. Enjoy interviews with local professionals dedicated to providing the very best products and services. Learn who they are, what they do, and most importantly, why they do it. Take a step inside the minds of some of Chicagoland's most successful business leaders and learn all there is to know on the Trust Radio Network with your host, Attorney Stephen A. Leahy. See you right back here next Saturday night at 7 on AM 560. The Answer.
Isn't that painfully long?
Yes, it is. My son tells me that. Get rid of that, Dad. It takes up all your time on your radio show.
Do that half the time.
Attorney Goren, thanks so much.
Catchy. I like it. But I don't know. Who knows what the younger generation is like? I think it's catchy.
I certainly don't know what they like, so I'm learning. But again, my son does some of our. He takes some of the clips and cuts them up. So I'll send you links to them when he does that.
That'd be awesome.
And if you could share them or whatever, I'd appreciate it. I
will.
I have two sons, both in law school, and I love when I get to ask attorneys that question about what kind of advice they have for law students, and so I really appreciate your input on that.
My daughter wants nothing to do with law. She wants nothing to do with it. She's going elementary education at Drake, and she also enjoys marketing. But and her mom is a public health, pediatric infectious disease public health physician. She definitely doesn't want medicine. So she's made it clear she's going out on her own, and what her parents do, no way.
Well, I didn't have anything to do with my son's picking. Well, maybe I did. I have a little bit to do with it. Well, thanks so much for joining us. I'd love to have you.
Thank you, and feel free to ask me to come back. I had a blast. You're fun.
Well, great. I'm glad that you agree, and I'm gonna take you up on that. So thanks so much for joining us.
That'd be great.
Thank you, sir. We'll see you again soon.
Take care.
Bye now. Okay.
Nice guy.
Yeah, nice guy. Actually, fascinating with the area of the law. I mean, I'm always. Yeah. That's why I love to have.
That's when you don't hear a lot about it.
You really don't. And I'm not a big government guy. I don't know if you know that about me, George.
I hadn't noticed anything.
But and the ADA is kind of a big government thing.
Yeah. But it's a lot different than most.
Well, I remember when George W. Bush or H.W. Bush, passed this, allowed to pass it, and conservatives were up in the air about it. no, I shouldn't say up in the air.
To be fair, it was pretty vague when it was first.
Well,
conceived.
you know, it is still vague because,
That's true.
and that's what it is. It's because that's why it's so all encompassing. It hits everything, and you know, and he was talking about people bringing these suits. You know, and I've seen these lawyers who send people in and they measure how the mirror is off, or you know, maybe your door is off a half an inch, or maybe you don't have a ramp up, and then they sue you. And really, what they're doing, I think, this is extortion, and that's why I don't like that area, that particular part of that law that allows for these private suits to
But that's
come.
something that could be fixed by defining standing, isn't
Well,
it? Because
I agree.
you know, only after someone has an issue, like okay, maybe the wheelchair ramp at a seafood restaurant isn't, you know, it's like a 1/4 inch too narrow compared to code. But if no one ever has an issue, then no one ever sues him. Then the world's working as it should.
I agree with that. And and then when they send somebody in to measure it with a oversized wheelchair on purpose.
Play school tape measure.
You know, yeah. But they'll send an oversized wheelchair in on purpose that won't work. But again, they don't even have to prove that they even wanted anything to do with it. Yeah. All they have to do is say, "Hey, it's too short," and that's in it. That's enough.
Technically correct.
So again, I had this. I think that's interesting, and this is actually has something to do. I had as I mentioned to him, I have a consumer protection attorney in, and you know they say, well, you know, if you weren't hurt, you shouldn't be able to bring that suit. And of course, he was angry. Well, I wouldn't say he's angry. He was disappointed in that because a lot of his clients, well, that you know, they could have been hurt.
That's a fair point.
They were. It is a fair.
Was lucky enough not to get hurt.
It is a fair point. So he as a consumer protection lawyer. So you know he's been on let's say he's on a no-fly list but it never affects him. But he's been on the list, right?
I haven't tried to fly, but I'll bet I'm on a list.
Well, you know, I don't.
I'm being watched from all sides.
You know that I am too, since I was even there on January 6th, and
you weren't in the building.
I was not in the building.
So I think
I'm going to tell
that's
you
where they're
something.
drawing
A million people were there, not in the building.
Yeah,
and when they tell you, "Oh, everybody was there," it was an insurrection. No, it wasn't. It wasn't an insurrection. No. We had enough people there to insurrect if we wanted to.
What that was is tailgate overboard.
That's right.
Yeah.
And again, there was enough people there to insurrect if we wanted to insurrect.
Well, to be fair to people making accusations of insurrection, though, most insurrections end after you ask someone politely to leave the building, and they do. That's generally how. You know, coup d'etats end, right? If someone's like, "Hey, could you please leave?"
I think Fidel. If someone just would have said to Fidel Castro,
"Hey, could you please not do that?" And go, I'm sorry.
Would have left. Yeah. Stayed within the velvet ropes.
Over. Yeah. You know, nothing burns. Human
weapons.
nature is to be very kind to each other.
No weapons.
Yeah.
No.
We have words.
Very, very good point, George. I think that is unbelievably good. Okay, let me just kind of redo my. I had to undo some of this stuff.
Your thing. I got about 3 minutes before I got to hit Kirk. And
well, go do your 3 minutes.
I can come back.
It doesn't. I know you can't do it in advance, so you have to wait.
No, I'm kind of following along with live radio. For anybody who hasn't picked it up, who is watching his stream, I'm running the radio station and I'm down here working on a studio. Because somebody two people were on vacation.
You're amazing, George.
I'm a jerk of all trades.
When I was told today, George I thought I've done this with George before. We can work it out.
We'll make it happen.
It'll work.
Yep. I got to babysit in a little while, but other than that,
I knew we'd make it work. But they don't know.
All I really need to do to tear down the curtain a little bit here, all I have to do is start your clock and start your music. Yeah. And then get to the point where it introduces you and I can fade the music. And then I can go walk around the building
till the end.
Backwards.
Even at the end, you're okay. You can just come back and
That's
clip
right.
it.
And a lot of this is going to get put in post. Like for the IRS stuff, I think almost all of the drops are going to have to go in.
Okay, is that what you want to do? That's
I'm sorry about that.
No, that's all right.
You could always do it yourself. Like, quiet, numbskulls, I'm broadcasting.
We're not going to do those.
Or you could get your, that's what I'm going to have to put in post because I won't be in the room.
That's fine. That's fine.
It's unfortunate. It'll sound great on the radio.
It's unfortunate, but true.
Yeah.
Okay.
It fits most things in my life.
Oh, my God.
I've got my page up, if you were noticing.
Okay, so I'm. Do you want to start before you go, or what do you want to do? You want to go and then come back? What do you want to do?
If you're ready to start, we could start you up. I can come back and start you up. Whatever's easiest
Well,
for you.
I think I need to. Well, let's start. You can start. Start me up.
I don't know the end of that song.
I don't either. Yeah. That's one of the new. That's one of the new Rolling Stones songs. I mean, from the '80s. So it's one of the new songs.
One of those new songs that came out when I was like 3.
Oh, I wasn't 3. Okay.
No, I know you're old. I know.
I was already of age, and I remember when it came out. I was like, it's not.
I'm a man. I'm 40. All right. Let me. That's such great audio. Don't pick on this kid. I'm a man. Pick on me. I'm 40.
I'm 40.
I'm 40.
I'm almost 40.
That's up there with
not sure what I'm going to rant about today.
Playoffs.
Yeah. I also like. We know they were who we thought they were.
Oh yeah. Well, you know what? They were. If they are who you thought they were, that you thought they were going to kick your butt.
And they did.
Yep.
I agree with that.
All right, I can fire it up if you're ready.
Well, let us do that. I guess. Let me just get rid of this, and I'll put.
And if you can do your own sound effects, then when people listen to it on the radio, it'll magically turn into the real ones.
I'm okay with that.
Sorry.
Let me see if I can do this. Attorney Stephen Leahy. I don't really know what I'm going to rant about though, but that's okay. I'll figure something out.
All right, I got to go get Gork. Give me 1 second. Sorry.
Okay, that's fine. What did I want to talk about? I don't know. Well, we're still streaming out there, so we're waiting for George to come back and start the show. We're going to start the IRS Radio Hour, and I'm always wondering about. I could rant about anything, but I have to think about what's been in my craw recently. I've been so busy with the tax season that I haven't really had much time to think about too much else. That was on Monday that was over, but still, it's kind of taking over my life. I am a tax attorney after all, so it does take up some. Maybe that's it. I can rant about the IRS because what they're doing. It's not really the IRS as much as the government and what happens whenever right after tax season every year they do the same thing. They push the same narrative. It's just amazing to me the narratives that get pushed, and that everybody seems to be on the same page all the time, and it just doesn't make any sense. How do they all know what to talk about all the time? It just kind of amazing to me. Let me move this out of the way here. There we go. Usually I'll sit over there, but I'm already okay here. Anyway, I think maybe that's what I'll talk about. What did I just say? The IRS. I am an IRS attorney, a tax attorney. So help a lot of people with their business and trying to figure out how to best structure their business in order to pay less taxes. Probably talk about that on the blog segment. I think we're going to talk a little bit about tax planning. I did that a couple of weeks ago, but it's interesting because that's exactly what I'm helping people do, now. And a lot of times they come to see me because I think that's another thing I could talk about, because the common thread between many of my clients, again, is that they're very good at what they do. They just have this area that they're not good at, and that generally has to do with bookkeeping and taxes and paperwork and things like that. And that's what we help try to overcome. We try to overcome this with people. So I think maybe that's what we can talk about in the blog segment. In the Mr. Know-It-All segment, though, what did I talk about? I had it up. Let's see what I had up here on the Mr. Know-It-All segment. Extensions. So we could talk about, because everybody on Monday thinks about, well, I have to get an extension. Most of my clients get extensions, okay, and many business people do, because when you have what they call a subchapter S entity, like a corporation or an LLC. Let's do it.
Is that the same thing when people say S corp? Is that?
That's what a subchapter S corporation.
Interesting.
And you could be a subchapter S LLC also. It's subchapter S is the designation of the IRS code.
Gotcha.
So that's what.
See, I tend to be an A corp, but an S hole. All right. Let me get you started.
What I like most about you, George, is that you recognize that.
Well, first step to solving a problem is admitting a problem. I'm still waiting to get to step 2. I'm fine at step 1. We'll just admit it and move on.
I understand. Let us do this show.
Stand by.
Standing by.
Pursuant to Internal Revenue Service guidance, be advised that any federal tax advice contained in this program is not intended to be used, and it cannot be used by any person or entity for the purpose of avoiding any tax penalties that may be imposed by the Internal Revenue Service or any other U.S. federal taxing authority or agency, or promoting, marketing, or recommending to another party any transaction or matter addressed in this show. The opinions expressed by the host and the guests are their own and may not be used as authoritative advice. Any use of this material without the written consent of the host is strictly prohibited.
You're listening to the IRS Radio Hour with your host, Attorney Stephen Leahy, on AM 560, The Answer. Tune in every week at 5 for an informative discussion about IRS obligations, credit card debt, mortgage default, collection activity, and how to resolve these legal issues using tax resolution, debt settlement, mortgage loan modification, foreclosure defense, and bankruptcy. Your host is Stephen Leahy, and the principal at Open Tax Resolutions and the law office of Stephen Leahy, PC. Stephen is the author of Deal with Your IRS Problems Today. IRS and debt issues are serious, but there is help. There are resolutions. So get ready and take notes during the IRS Radio Hour. And now, here's your host, Attorney Stephen Leahy.
Hello, Chicago Patriots. We are coming to you from Studio C here at AM 560, The Answer. This is the IRS Radio Hour. Now remember, the IRS Radio Hour is sponsored by the Law Office of Stephen A. Leahy, PC, and Opum Tax Advocates. Opum Tax Advocates helps business professionals solve their IRS problems forever. We help them with audits and levies, liens and garnishments, collections, unfiled tax returns, and payroll tax issues. We also help people with mortgage foreclosures, loan modifications, bankruptcy, and other debt-related issues. So if you have any of these problems, or if you know someone who does, you should give us a call at 312-664-6649. Again, it's 312-664-6649. You can visit us on the web at chicagotaxteam.com. If you've been listening to the show, you can hear my new ads. They're kind of new, a couple weeks now. And I'm offering my book, Deal with Your IRS Problems, for free. So if you go to freeirsbook.com, again, freeirsbook.com, you can get your free copy. or you can give us a call, 312-664-6649. I'll be happy to send you a copy. So the first thing you should do when you know that you have an IRS problem, and you know it before people like to let on, if you haven't filed your tax returns. If you haven't done that, the first thing you should do before anything else, get a copy of my book, Deal with Your IRS Problem Today. Again, go to freeirsbook.com, freeirsbook.com. What is it? freeirsbook.com. So go there, get your free copy. I want to welcome our technical producer, George Hoffman.
Good afternoon, sir.
Georgie, like I like to call Joliet Josh. Joliet.
I got so many names here.
Well,
it's getting ridiculous.
And you should see when you're not around what they call you.
I hear when I'm not around. You have no idea how many microphones I have.
Well, this is a radio station with radios with they're everywhere. They're everywhere. So anyway, we're gonna do the we're gonna do the review and comment on the news. Okay.
I'm trying.
I know. Don't worry about it.
I don't know where this is.
That's okay. Don't worry about it.
I'm still worried about it.
No, don't worry about it.
You know what? I'll bet it's on the next page.
That doesn't matter.
Oh, I'll adjust the clock because here it is.
The news roundup, review and comment on the news. As a matter of fact, I was just telling someone that was in my office, and we were talking about old radio, and I was talking about Eddie Verdoliak and the Ty and Eddie show. But really, one of my favorite shows was the G. Gordon Liddy show, and that's where I got the review and comment on the news. A lot, the big news for me this week. What is it? Tax day was April 18th. And we were pretty swamped this year. If I have to admit it, I have to say I don't actually prepare tax returns. I have outstanding people who do that for me, and they did an outstanding job this year. I mean, we were really swamped. We had more than ever, and they really pulled in the slack and worked beyond what I had expected, and we got it all done. And well, one of the things we get done is many of my clients ask for an extension. We're going to talk about extensions in I think the Mr. Know-It-All segment. We're going to talk about extensions and what that means and how you can help. But the tax thing has really been first and foremost on my mind this week. Now, every year it's the same thing though. Right after tax season, what do you keep hearing? Oh, the IRS, they can't do it. They need more money. And it just doesn't make any sense to me that they need more money. Or here's one that they're coming up with, and you're going to hear it all over the place. Everybody seems to come up with the same idea at the same time. It's kind of amazing like that. But here's the new idea. The IRS should prepare your tax returns for free. In Sweden, you just get a text message, and then your taxes are filed. In Croatia, it's a 5 minutes. But here in America, we spend all this time and effort on tax returns. It just doesn't make any sense. We should let the IRS do it for us. And my response is always, there's nothing more expensive than when you get things for free, right? So if we turn around and let the government do all of our tax preparation for us, first, do you think your taxes will go up or down? You think the IRS will find all the deductions you're entitled to or not? Do you think that they're going to be honest with you and try to lower your tax bill, or are they going to try to increase your tax bill? Well, we know the answer to that. But more than that, they will... they're going to come after. They don't know the information that's in there that you have to put it. How many kids you have, all these intricacies of your life. They'd have to know all of that in order to do your tax returns, because our tax code is granted very complicated. You can make it easy and just say, hey, we're going to take it all, and I think a lot of countries do this. We'll just take it all and we'll give you back what we want, and then you'll be happy with it. But don't worry about it. Everything's free. Don't worry about it. You get free school, you get free tax preparation, everything's free, but nothing's free. Well, we all know that. You're not paying it for yourself, but somebody's paying for it. And again, there's nothing more expensive than when the government wants to give it to you for free. We know that there's example after example after example of this, and to expand it to the IRS, like the IRS does. They're still, they don't do your tax returns for free, and yet they're still waiting on 2020 tax returns. What do you think they would do if they had to do all the tax returns themselves, right? And I saw the latest numbers for 2021. as of I think the end of April, 96% of all tax returns have been filed electronically. 96%. So one of the things that the IRS always says is, hey, wait a minute, there's 20% more tax returns now than there were in 2000 or 2000, and our budget's gone down. Our budget should have gone up. But my argument is always, wait a minute. 96% of all tax returns are done electronically now. And all of that labor-intensive work that you used to do, opening up envelopes, getting sorting all of that mail out, and then what the IRS would do is they would input the data from a paper return into the computer, and they would do that 2 or 3 times to make sure that it was accurate. And so all of that work now that used to be done by the IRS, that employees, and they needed the facilities, and they had to store all that paper, and they had to do all of that. They don't have to do any of that anymore. And so when they start screaming, we need more money, I don't know if you know this, but in the Build Back Better plan that has failed, but they keep bringing it back. They in that plan, they have $80 billion to the IRS. $80 billion. And I always ask people, what do you think the budget to the IRS is? And almost nobody knows. So if you say, well, is it $500 billion? Nah, that seems reasonable. Is it $700 billion? Is it it's $14 billion. That's the IRS budget. And when they tell you they can't answer the phone because they don't have enough money, or this year they already gave them $675 million more for this year, and they want to add. They're adding 10,000 new employees, but they want to add 80,000 new employees to the IRS. And we should let them do they can't even answer the phone. We're going to let them do our tax returns. We're going to rely on them to do everything. We're going to give them all of our information. They've done such a great job keeping everything private. Right? We just saw that all these tax returns for the last 15 years of the wealthiest people in America, they were all released last year. Where'd they come from? Had to come from the IRS. Has there even been an investigation about how those leaked? No, nobody seems to care. So if the IRS had all your information, how would you think would be the chances that would get out to others, that they would find this information if they wanted? How many people try to hack the IRS websites? They tell us that their technology stinks, and because they don't have enough money, because $14 billion a year is not enough money. But they tell you that they can't stop the hackers, but yet we're supposed to give them more information? We're supposed to rely on the IRS more? It doesn't make any sense to me. And again, I think just their own performance kind of begrudges the fact that they can't get more. We shouldn't give them more work, right? We should try to take work away from them. Don't give them more. Don't give them more. Don't let them go into our lives more. We need to fight that. We need to take less IRS, less government. That's just the way it should be. But anyway, that's my own opinion. And anyway, now remember, if you're fighting, if the IRS, they're a big organization, and they come after people. If they're coming after you, well, then you should give us a call at 312-664-6649. Remember, get a copy of my book, Deal with Your IRS Problem Today. Go to freeirsbook.com, get your free copy, or you can call us at 312-664-6649. 6649. We're going to take a short break. We're going to have the blog segment on the other side, and you should join us here on AM 560, The Answer.
We have to do more than just build back better. We have to build back better. We have to compete.
That's not gold. All right, give me a second. I'll be back to start I got to get.
That's fine.
I have to get Mr. Gorka back into the segment. Stephen, let me tell you about relief factor. All right, give me a second.
That's very good, George. You practiced.
Yeah, for the last 28 years.
Anyway, so now I got to figure out what I'm going to talk about. I'm going to talk about extensions on the Mr. Know-It-All segment. We'll talk about extensions and how they work. I was going to talk about. I was going to talk about taxes, about business structure and things like that. I guess I could talk about on the. I talked about tax planning not too long ago. That's so important about the tax planning. So But it's also important about how your business is structured, and most people do not even give it a second thought. Most people just kind of fall into this. And if you really want your business to succeed, it takes planning. It's not a lot of times people fall into the job that they're doing by accident. They start doing. I had a guy who was started cleaning houses, right, and he started sending people, and all of a sudden it grew, and he's doing almost $1 million. No kidding, almost $1 million a year in business. Hadn't set up anything. Didn't even pay his taxes. Didn't even file his tax return for many years after building a business like that. And I tell people, when you build a business like that, you should do all you can to protect that business, right? Because it's very hard to find a niche that's going to be profitable. And once you do, you should protect it with everything. And then you should nurture it and let it grow. Now, it's funny because I'm probably going to repeat a lot of that, what I just told you. Oh, what I have to do. That's what I have to change the background here. So let me do that. Let me get rid of that. Let me go over here. Go like that. It's not Attorney Goren now. It's going to be Stephen Leahy. It's Attorney Leahy, and then we're going to talk about business structure. Business structure.
Oh, I showed up at a very exciting point in your stream.
Business structure. Let me just change the camera here, and then we can move forward. I didn't even have to take the time to set this other camera, George. I thought the guy was coming in. He didn't come in.
Yeah.
He's in Georgia. I should have known he was.
You should have been more specific than, I'm looking forward to meeting you in studio. Yeah, that was your first mistake.
Exactly. Okay, let us move along.
Stand by.
Standing by.
Welcome back to the IRS Radio Hour with attorney Stephen Leahy. Stephen has helped hundreds of Chicagoans recover from financial disaster, and he wants to help you and your family. There are resolutions, and you will hear about all those resolutions during today's informative discussion on the IRS Radio Hour on AM 560 The Answer. Now, here's your host, attorney Stephen Leahy.
Welcome back to the program. I am your host. I'm attorney Stephen Leahy. This is the IRS Radio. No, yeah, it is. It's the IRS Radio Hour. I have a couple shows that I get confused. I see our technical producer George Hoffman here, so that's another confusing thing.
Hey, that's me.
That's another confusing thing, George. That's the sound effect I always think about when I think about you, George.
It is the one I use the most because I spend most of my lifetime, at least historically, with Sean. So yeah, but he's extremely easy to work.
He's wrong. He's a big star now, Anyway,
yeah, just ask him.
I know. I am a big fan. Anyway, I'm a big fan of everybody here on AM 560. The Answer, including George Hoffman. I'm a big fan of George.
I appreciate that.
You know that.
Unnecessary, but I appreciate it.
No, it's very necessary. Now, George also helped him on the other show today, the Trust Radio Network. The Trust Radio Network, where we interview trusted professionals, people you can trust when you're making important decisions. I believe my guest last week was, because we did it, we had to do it in an offsite because it was Good Friday, so we couldn't be. So I had one of my favorite guests, Nishay Sanin, attorney Nishay Sanin, the federal defense lawyer, criminal defense lawyer, and he helps people. We talked a little bit about tax evasion and people that he's helped in those kind of realms and how he fights those in federal court. I hope you joined it last night and you heard that show. That's a great. Again, Nishay Sanin is a great attorney. Shares a lot of great insight. Here's one thing he always says: don't talk to the federal government when they come to your house. Get help. Martha Stewart should have done that.
Solid advice.
It is solid advice. But again,
meanwhile, the federal government's like, no, don't tell them that.
Come on, man. They are, and they'll do. Let me help you. If you just talk to me, we'll help you. No, they're not going to help you. They're not there to help you. And again, I think one thing that Niche has, Attorney Sandin, I should call him. He's a friend of mine. Is that they already have done an investigation? Generally, the federal government. We're not talking about local guys, the cops or anything. We're talking about the federal government. When
by the time you hear about it, they've already pretty much know exactly what they need to know.
Exactly.
Makes sense.
And then by the time they're asking you questions, they know the answer to those questions, and they want you to tell them something that's not true. So then they have an easier way to get you. Right, because that's easy to prove.
You're like Martha Stewart without a defense fund.
Exactly. And this is what the problem is. But that's Niche Sandin, so you can catch us at YouTube or Facebook or go to Watch Talk Radio. He's on there. We stream to LinkedIn, so he's all over. So if you didn't hear it last night, you should hear it. Now, next week, we have Attorney William Goren. He is a Americans with Disability attorney. He helps it with consulting. He takes on cases. But again, I gotta say, the guy knows more about this than I was amazed by how deep the scope of the Americans with Disability Act is, and how much there is to know. And again, the one thing I really like about the Trust Radio Network is that I learn so much from the guests that we have. So join us next Saturday at 7:00 here on AM's 560 The Answer for Attorney William Goren, and we're going to do the next segment.
Now remind me, Stephen, which segment is that?
That's all right. It's the blog segment.
It's the blog segment. The blog, and that's here.
It's the blog segment. The blog. The blog. I know the show, George. It is the blog segment where I talk about what's going on in my office. And, this week, I think a couple weeks ago we talked about tax planning because we help people with this tax planning. But here's the common thread that I have with my clients, besides the fact that they're procrastinators, because many of them are. But here's the common thread. They're very good at what they do. Whatever it is, I have podiatrists and dentists and lawyers and just people who run any kind of business you can imagine that they come, and they're very good at what they do, outstanding at what they do. But they have this one area where they're just not good at, and that's usually bookkeeping, keeping records. And you can't really do your taxes correctly if you don't keep good records. And people get behind on doing their records, and then I'll catch up, And the next we're gonna on the Mr. Know-It-All segment, we're going to talk about extensions. But here I've had people that's come to see me and they filed an extension every year for the last 10 years, but they haven't filed their tax returns. But every year they ask for an extension because they have every intention of doing their tax returns. They just don't have the records to do it, and they're not organized. Okay, and another thing they don't do. Let me ask you this question: who pays the most taxes, percentage-wise, in our country? Small business people. And one of the reasons why they do that is because they're not good at the bookkeeping and everything, and they don't structure their business correctly. They kind of go by the seat of their pants. And a lot of times they just kind of start, there's the old story about the woman who makes the greatest pie in the world. And everybody says, you got to open up a pie shop. And so she opens up a pie shop, and they sell like crazy. She didn't know they were going to sell like crazy. Everybody told her they would. But then when it comes to trying to organize, she makes the greatest pie. But now when you get so many that you have to make, it's a different skill set. Managing people to help you make the pie, ordering, helping the customers, keeping the money, ordering goods, and and all the other things that it takes to run a business. This is where people kind of fall down, and this is where people need direction. Now, when you find a area that you can make money doing, and it's not easy. trying to start your own business. In my own opinion, is the government is really going out of their way to stop you and discourage you from running your own business. Why? Because that's who they blame all the tax gap on. People run their own business. They're cheating the government all the time. And they're not cheating the government. Now, some people don't file their tax returns and maybe not pay taxes because it's so complicated, and they make it complicated to make people discourage them from starting their own business. But don't let it discourage you. If you haven't filed your taxes in some years, there's a way out. Okay, so I have people come to see me, they haven't filed in many, many years. And that's it creates this paralysis, right? That they just, every year around April, again, as I mentioned, they'll ask for an extension. They want to get to it, and they ask for an extension. They just never get to it. And because the problem seems too big for them. And so I wanted to talk about business structure, though, because when you start structuring your business, you're as a business and not just something that you do. It's not your job, right? A business means that there's more than you involved in it. And most of these, when you grow, there's more than you involved. And so that, again, this is a different skill. And so these are skills that are learnable. People say, well, I'm just not good at that. You could become good at it. All you have to do is have the right direction. And that's what we try to help people do. We not only solve their IRS problem, but help them build for the future, right? So structure your business accordingly so you can pay less taxes, right? If you've heard about these flow through, maybe you haven't, but these, what they call subchapter S organizations like a corporation or an LLC, and setting them up correctly. First, again, it helps you view your business different, that it's not just you, it's a separate entity, and it's something that you can nurture and build, and it helps you, but it also cuts your taxes. And that's really, you want to lower your tax burden legally, and there's ways to do it. Yes, the tax code is complicated, so use that complication to your advantage, right? Hire someone that understands this and give you the opportunity to grow your business. Because what I found happens when people are fighting the IRS and they fall behind in the IRS, they don't concentrate on their business and building their business. That's the mistake, right? You need to nurture your business and help it grow. But when you're behind to the IRS, you look at it, it's just it hurts every time you think about it. And so you don't think about growing because you owe the IRS so much money. It's like, well, what's the purpose? What's the point? But I can show you how to not only solve your IRS problem, but help you grow your business. That's what we do at Open Tax Advocates, right? So we're advocates. We help you structure your business, tax planning, personal tax planning too. So all of that is what we do at Open Tax Advocates. And so if you're having any problems, even if you're not having problems, if you're running a small business and you need some direction, you should give Open Tax Advocates a call. Call them at 312-664-6649. Again, it's 312-664-6649. We're going to take a little bit of a break. We're going to go to the Constitution segment next with Attorney William Goren. He's going to talk about the ADA, the Americans with Disabilities Act, and the Constitution. It's kind of amazing. The guy really knows a lot about it. So join us, won't you, on AM 560, The Answer.
Yay.
Yay.
We done a thing.
Yeah, we only got two more. Guaca.
Hello, it's Sebastian Gorka. Actually, you know what? He does the same thing the Macho Man would do, which is the Macho Man would get real high. Oh, yeah, I'm going to come after you, Hogan. And then he would go real low and get real way down and come back up. And Gorka does the same thing, just without the energy.
That's very good.
Probably the cocaine.
That was a very good Randy Macho Man Savage.
It's better when I'm not worried about breaking a microphone.
And Ms. Elizabeth.
Yeah, I don't do a Miss Elizabeth.
No, she just walked around.
I can do that. I can walk around. I can limp around.
You can't walk around like she used to, though, because she looked good when she did it.
I don't think anyone wants me to try. But yeah, Gorka does the same thing. Says, hello, I'm Sebastian Gorka, and today we're going to talk about whatever relief factor. Let me tell you about Relief Factor. Stephen, Relief Factor is your key to whatever. And
That is very good, George.
that's how it's the same.
Do you do a lot of impersonations or just a couple? Because those were both very good.
I might.
And it is noticing those little nuances that make.
It's everything.
Have you ever seen the guy who does the Donald Trump impersonation?
I've seen a lot of people do that.
No, there's one guy that does a really good. He's a younger guy too, but he's got those. It's the little things that make the way he breathes in.
Yeah, just little things. It's the way you breathe in.
Yeah,
it's the pauses. He breathes in and he looks. So if you're doing a physical impression, it helps a lot.
And then he puts that in, throws that in.
I need to get some sort of AI voice changer that literally just changes tone and tenor. So that all I have to do a good impression is to act it out. My Patrick Stewart would be just amazing, and all this you could
Number one.
You could do a whole lot of, the tequila and the strawberries are in the blender. Engage. So anyway,
very good.
I'm ready if you are.
Let's do the Mr. Know-It-All segment.
Stand by.
Do you have the things? Do you have the?
Probably not. But we'll
remember we do Taxman.
And now, here's...
But we do the Taxman first, because I'm the Taxman. The Beatles.
The Know-It-All thing is probably going to have to go in post. I apologize for that.
Which one?
The Mr. Know-It-All. Because
You just did it.
Well, yeah. But it's going to have to get put in post, because I'll be in the other room when it's time to play it.
Okay, well, we're going to do it right now, I thought.
But it's going to tax me.
You mean at the end?
Yeah.
Well, that's the end.
Yeah,
Thank you, man.
That one.
That one, okay, thank you. But let's do the beginning.
All right.
But we do the Taxman, the Beatles song.
All right, I got to, hold on.
Okay, I'll wait for you. I talk too much. That's right, people. I talk too much. I should probably put I thought I had that, the logo. Well, I'll put that up there. There it is. Let's put the logo up there. I should have done that before. 560 AM 560. The answer. I can't do Gorka. That was very good. It is those little things like that you kind of go low and then you go high. I never thought about that. I'm not an impersonator. I'm not Rich Little. Do you remember Rich Little? He was probably the impersonator extraordinaire. The guy who played the Riddler. What was his name? I forget his name. But he was a good. Remember they used to have the show. What was it called? The Copycat, I think it was called. And they did a bunch of guys who did impersonations. I think it was the 60s or the 70s. That was a great show. I'll have to ask George if he ever. But remember, Rich Little was a big star. I don't know. Do we have any? Are there any impersonators anymore? I don't think so. None that I'm, except for as I was mentioning, the guy who does Donald Trump. If you go to citizensfreepress.com, they have a lot of his stuff on there whenever he comes out with something new. And I think he'll order something from Wendy's, as Donald Trump. Again, it's the little nuances that make him sound like Donald Trump. Not only the sound, not only the voice, but what he would say, and and that's why it's so funny. I wonder why that is that we don't have impersonators anymore. I don't know. I know Rich Little's still alive and still around. I just saw him on some show, and he was still doing impersonations. Man, he used to do Jimmy Stewart really good. John Wayne. I'm thinking about he was always on Johnny Carson. We should. I wonder why that is. I don't know. Well, we're going to talk about tax return extensions. That's what we're going to talk about in the next segment. I did talk about that on my podcast. I went on. We talked about the extensions and what that all means. But whenever you're ready, George.
I'm extremely sorry about that.
No,
Sebastian Gorka went out early.
Gorka. Did you miss it?
He went out a minute and a half. I almost did.
But you didn't.
I ran into the room just as I needed to hit a button.
Good. I'm glad you left.
Yeah.
That's terrible.
All right.
Okay, let's do it. Whatever. I'll play it by ear. You can put it in later or not. I don't care.
I will do my level best.
Okay.
Stand by.
Try to do better.
Okay. I'll get a little unlevel.
Welcome back to the IRS Radio Hour with attorney Stephen Leahy. Stephen has helped hundreds of Chicagoans recover from financial disaster, and he wants to help you and your family. There are resolutions, and you will hear about all those resolutions during today's informative discussion on the IRS Radio Hour on AM 560 The Answer. Now, here's your host, attorney Stephen Leahy.
Yeah, I am the tax man here on AM 560, The Answer. I want to thank, we're here with our technical producer, George
Buenos dias.
Hoffman, and you, the listener. And let's do the show. Well, that's okay. This is the
And now, here's that man with a head just crammed full of knowledge, Mr. Know-It-All.
Mr. Know-It-All. Now, I have to say at the beginning, he says, and he's going to talk about all of that. Well, that's a little overstatement. I'm not going to talk about everything today. But what I am going to talk about is extensions. So tax return extensions. Because I get the question all the time. Well, I can't pay the IRS on time, so let's ask for an extension. And I have to tell them, you know what, an extension only gives you an extension to file the return. It doesn't give you an extension to pay the taxes that are due. And so if you're going to wind up owing the IRS money and you don't pay them before the tax day, and again, the tax day this year was April 18th, and April 18th because April 15th was Friday, April 16th was Saturday, April 16th in Washington, D.C. is Emancipation Day, and it's celebrated on the nearest weekday. So because of Saturday, the nearest weekday is Friday, they celebrated it on April 15th. So that means that the IRS office was closed, and so they pushed tax day to April 18th on Monday. So that was Monday. So to get an extension, you had to ask for an extension, and it's automatic if you fill out the proper form. I forget the form name, but if you fill out the proper form before the deadline is over, then you get an extension. There's nothing else you have to prove. You don't have to say why you need an extension. You just say, I want an extension, and you get the extension. And so, but again, it doesn't give you an extension for the time to pay the IRS. That is still due by the tax day. And if you don't pay by the tax day, then you're going to start paying penalties. Now, the penalty for not paying, this is a lot less per month than the penalty for not filing. The penalty for not filing is 5% per month, up to 25% of what you owe, and the penalty for not paying is 0.5% per month, up to 25%. Okay, so for each portion of the month. So if you're 1 day late, it's the whole month, and so this is. You have to know this, so it's not that big of a deal if you're going to be just a month late and you're going to owe a little bit of money. Here's another thing that you should know: if you're a W-2 employee, and every year you get a refund, and this year you're going to get a refund, well then you really don't have to even ask for an extension. You have 3 years to file your tax return in order to get the refund. Now, if you wait longer than 3 years, well then you won't get the refund. So I was pushing this before April 18th that 2018, if your 2018 tax return, you were supposed to get a refund and you didn't file it now before the 18th of April this year, then you're not going to get a refund. Unless, as I mentioned before in another segment, unless you ask for an extension that year. And again, a lot of people who don't file, they ask for an extension. So if you asked for an extension in 2019, right, for 2018, then you have until October, usually the 15th. I think this year it's the 17th because the 15th is on a Saturday. So then the next business day would be Monday, the 17th. So that's the day that they're due. So if you had asked for an extension in 2019, then you have until October 19th or 17th. I'm sorry. Then you have until October 17th to ask for your refund. Now, if you wait for later than that, then you're not going to get the refund. So again, I think that people don't really understand that the extension, if you don't ask for an extension, then the penalty is based on how much you owe. But if you don't owe, well, then there is no penalty. Then you don't have to worry about it. And so if you're getting a refund, then you should file that refund. I don't understand and I had many clients who have refunds every year and they still haven't filed in 5-6 years. I had a guy come in who had, he came in a month before the deadline and he had some refunds due for 2018. So we hurried up, got his tax return done for 2018, and he got $5,000 back. Yeah, $5,000. And and that's great that he got that refund, that we got it in on time and he got the refund. But here's the problem. He hadn't done 17 either, and he hadn't done 16 either. And he had the similar refunds for those years, but he didn't get those refunds because it's over the 3 years, so it's over the rule. They don't have to pay him. And so he lost all that money. And so if I'm getting $5,000 back, and what does it cost to have someone do your tax return? And people I don't want to pay someone to do my tax return. So better you don't do it and then lose all that money. Even if you just lost it for a year and you did it next year, you still doesn't make sense. You should get that money. You should have it ready. Anyway, that's why, and I hope that answered your question. Okay, so we're going to take a little bit of a break. Remember, if you're fighting the IRS, if you have some questions about taxes, you should give us a call at 312-664-6649. Remember to tell them that you heard me on the show ask you to call for a question so you can get through, because we don't just let everybody call, and otherwise that's all I would be doing is being on the phone answering questions. So remember, mention that you heard this on the show and I will answer your questions. So otherwise we're going to take a little bit of a break here on AM 560, The Answer. That's right. Now we're going to take a break. George's not here. Now, next segment is one of my favorite segments, and that's sponsored by Triple Zeros. That's right. Join now. Who I got? I got people on LinkedIn.
1 p.m. and I'm giving you 10 extra minutes.
She's live. I'm live on LinkedIn. Can I on LinkedIn? I'm live on LinkedIn. Can I watch somebody else live on LinkedIn and broadcast that live on LinkedIn? Is that the way that works? Anyway, no Jolly at Josh, but he's still sponsoring the final segment of the show. Triple Zeros. I didn't watch his show this week though. I usually watch his show I watch it on YouTube, but it's on all Spotify, all that stuff. Did you hear about the Obamas losing their gig? Did you hear about Netflix going under? All of this woke stuff. Netflix was amazing. Did you hear about Netflix, George?
Yeah, so I totally got out of the market in December, like completely. And the only thing I'm back into is some Lockheed that I bought at the end of February for a mysterious reason. But I actually owned some Netflix.
Did you?
Really glad.
Did you see the guy was it $400 million or $40 million? I forget. A lot of money. I know it's 10 times.
I'd say either of those qualify.
Yeah, it's a lot of money, and he dumped them all at the same time. Said, I'm out. I think it was $400 million.
I mean, depending on when, that's a smart move.
He lost $400 million.
Yeah.
And because he had a big stake in it, and he only had it for a year, and he got out because he says, because now you see Netflix is changing their everything because it's not.
I don't think it's even that deep. I think it's surface. People are back to work. There's not a whole bunch of people locked down in their homes.
Well,
look at what Netflix was worth in, say, January of 2020. Yeah. That should be your baseline.
Well, the problem is, as they're saying, is that because they're one of the woke corporations and everything that
doesn't help.
That everything they're producing is crap.
But you see, the streaming services in general are dying in the vine.
Well, that makes sense.
And it's because people just aren't spending the time. People are going back to movie theaters. My wife and I went to a movie last week.
Did you? What'd you see?
Felt like I was on Mars. What was it? The Batman.
I've only been to 2 movies in the last 30-some years.
We go to the second tier theater.
I don't know what that is.
Where you're paying half as much, and it's 2
older,
weeks later.
A little bit older movie.
Yeah, we saw the Batman. It's great.
Did you go to?
Do you want me to bring him in? Do you want me to do more?
You can. I'm just going to start him.
Did you go to one with booze?
We generally do. We go to one that has some dinner.
I've never done that.
They serve you dinner. There's a great one in Wheaton. I don't know. My wife knows the name of it. Studio something.
I've never been to. I've never been there.
It's fun.
The only one I've ever been to was a Joe Walsh event that in not Nashville, but
I know
Naperville.
Naperville, yeah.
And they had at 560 had an event out there.
Well,
let's do it.
I've already started the afternoon drive show.
Okay, well, you know that this is sponsored by Joliet Josh and Triple Zeros.
Oh, is this sponsored by Joliet Josh?
Yeah, so there should be a Triple Zeros.
Should I pull the? Oh, is there a thing?
Yeah, he's got it recorded.
Oh, let's see here. Let's see, Josh. Next page? No. Next page? Maybe.
I forgot the gentleman's name that was here last week. Who's the guy that did the show for Jolly? Keith is correct. That's right. He found it.
He found it? Oh, Keith found it. I can find it. Let's be honest here. Legit not seeing. Damn. Let's look one more place.
Sponsor or Triple Zeros? I don't know.
That's what I was looking for. Was like Trip Zeros, which if you haven't checked it out, it's his sports podcast.
I have
phenomenal.
Listened. I have listened. I
was speaking to the stream viewers.
I watch it on YouTube. It is good. Josh knows so much about the in-depth of every player in the NBA and NFL.
NFL, yeah.
And we were talking. I don't know if you know this, but he's now the beat reporter for. And he's out there interviewing for the Bears. That's pretty big. I think that was good for him.
He kills it with it.
Yeah, he does.
Encyclopedia. He's like I am with houses. Boy, I tell you.
You don't find it?
Maybe this
segment of the IRS.
There we go. Okay.
What do you name it?
It's called IRS Segment 5 SPO. I didn't see, it's sponsor, but that's all that fits in the box. So all I saw, I thought it was a segment.
Okay.
So does that play cold beforehand or what?
Well, we play the intro and then him and then
right.
Then
all right.
Me.
Stand by.
Standing by.
I'm
short
sorry,
segment.
I didn't mean to cut you off.
That's fine. I'm used to. I'm married.
Welcome back to the IRS Radio Hour with attorney Stephen Leahy. Stephen has helped hundreds of Chicagoans recover from financial disaster, and he wants to help you and your family. There are resolutions, and you will hear about all those resolutions during today's informative discussion on the IRS Radio Hour on AM 560 The Answer. Now, here's your host, attorney Stephen Leahy.
This segment of the IRS Radio Hour is brought to you by the Triple Zeros Podcast. The game's not over until the clock strikes triple zeros. And now, here's your host, Stephen Leahy.
Well, thank you, Joliet Josh. Hey, Joliet's not even here. We're here with...
He's here in spirit.
He is here in spirit. We are here with George, our technical producer, Georgie, I like to call him. And
hello, friend.
And, we usually talk about sports. I got to tell you, here's what I like. The vaccine thing is all gone. So I've been going to games again. I went to the Hawks game a couple of times with my good friend David Hochberg. See, here's when you have friends that have tickets to a event, and they call you, say, "Hey, I got tickets. Would you like to go?" Always say yes, right? Because then they'll call you the next time. Because if they get stuck with these tickets, nobody wants. I have season tickets. I've had them forever. If I call you and say, and sometimes it's the last minute, right? Because that's just the way it works. And so at the last minute, someone calls you. If I call you and say, "Hey, I got ball game. Would you like to go to the ball game?" If you say no, or who are you playing? Well, then I'm probably not going to call you again. But if you said yes, and I knew that every time I call you and said, "Hey, let's go to the ball game," and you say, "Yeah, sure," you're going to get a lot of calls from me. Right? You're going to get to see a lot of ball games. So I got to go to a couple Hawks games. I haven't, right, because the mandate. I was objecting to the mandate, and so I never went to the stadium when the mandate was in place. Been to the baseball game. I went to a Cubs game on Tuesday night with my son Joey, and it was my first game of the year. It was really cold out there, but we had a great time. Always have a great. One thing about Wrigley is kind of it makes you relax. At least it does for me. It makes me relax, and I never think of anything else but baseball when I'm there. So that's what I love about Wrigley Field. I'm gonna wonder if I'm a Wrigley Field fan or if I'm a Cub fan. I know I'm both, but I think if the Cubs left Wrigley Field and somebody else went in, I'd have to go back to Wrigley Field because it's such a I got so many great memories there. And again, it's where I can go. As soon as I walk up the stairs there, I'm feeling good, right? And I'm not worried about anything and everything. Just kind of relax. Think about baseball, and that's all you think. And if that's all you have to worry about is baseball, well, all your other problems, and that's what makes baseball so great. So anyway, so I'm glad that I'm back at the ballparks and hockey, although hockey's coming to an end, unfortunately, and the Bulls are coming to an end, unfortunately. Haven't been to a Bulls game yet out there, but I'll go next season because now I don't need a vaccine mandate. There's no card or anything, so that's good. What about that reminds me of the mask coming off. If you see all those videos of people flying and they get to take the masks off, it's like, woohoo! But if we're all so happy about not wearing masks, why do we follow the rules just because some guy said to follow the rules? We got one guy here in Illinois, Pritzker, who says, hey, wear a mask. And so everybody does because one guy says so. And as soon as he says, you know what, you don't have to wear a mask, then everybody says, oh, I guess I don't have to wear a mask. And then people could say, well, Attorney Leahy, that's what the law was. No, it wasn't. It was an executive order, I think, was beyond his authority to do that, and that's what happened with the court. The federal court said about the mask mandate for the TSA, said that they didn't have the authority to do that, and I think our guy didn't have the authority. Anyway, I want to thank you so much for joining us here today, here on the IRS Radio Hour. We're going to be back here next week at 5 o'clock on AM 560 The Answer. Remember, Open Tax Advocates helps business professionals solve IRS problems. 312-664-6649. Again, it's 312-664-6649. Shalom Klein's up after us here on AM 560 The Answer. Okay. I'm not going to sing Thank You for Being a Friend. George isn't here, so he can't play it on the board. So thanks so much for joining us. I got to pack up and get the heck out of here on AM 560.